Hey all, it's Paul from Drums and Rums with the Backbeats Meets the Spirit. This episode is sponsored by Club Tiki. Visit them at clubtikico.com to order rum-based cocktails in a can. Use promo code Drums and Rums to receive a discount and free shipping when you order 2 4-packs or more. They can the tropics so you don't have to. Thank you for checking out this podcast. If you are a regular listener, thank you for coming along on our journey with talking to informative and entertaining guests. If you are new to the podcast, welcome and thank you for choosing to listen to the Drums and Rums podcast. This episode was taped on location at the Richland Rum Distillery in Richland, Georgia. I can't say enough about Erik and Karen Vonk's hospitality. Listen to this episode and see why Richland, Georgia will be your new destination to check out. Now I'm proud to present our 100th episode.
12 or something like that. Yeah.
So, this is Paul from Drums and Rums with the Backbeats Meets the Spirits. And as you can see, I'm on location again. Well, I guess if you're listening, you can't see, but watch the video. You'll see what I'm talking about. So I'm here in Richland, Georgia. So I'm out of the traveling again, out to a location to meet our guests, which I think is the best way to do all this podcasting and having conversations with folks. And today I'm in Richland, as I said. Where is Richland, Georgia? Southwest Georgia. And why am I in Richland? I'm here at a rum distillery, and I know you're probably thinking rum in Georgia, but we're going to learn more about why we have rum in Georgia, and it's not just all about peanuts, right? I know that's what the...
Nope.
Yeah.
Nope.
So here on the podcast today, I am with Erik Vonk, owner of Richland Rum. So good morning, Erik.
Good morning, Paul.
Yes.
Pleasure to be with you.
Yes. So again, as we were talking a little bit there before we started, was how I learned about you, and I'm starting to get into, about 2 years ago, more seriously into learning more about rum and other than the big names, which we won't say who they are, but I think everyone knows who we're talking about, right? Is getting that word out there. All these different companies, distilleries, people have got great stories. Hardworking. The pandemic, right? That was very difficult, I'm sure, for everybody, especially smaller companies. But so where does this all start? Richland Rum, and how did we end up in Georgia, right? Because we're not in the Caribbean, we're not in Florida, we're not in the Barbados, right? Georgia.
No, but it does start in Indonesia.
Okay. Wow, we just totally... It's like, where in the world is Carmen Sandiego episode, right?
Yeah, exactly. We'll go through a journey around the globe and end up in Richland, Georgia. No, but seriously, I was born in Indonesia and raised in Holland. And Holland has a long history in trading in rum.
The East Indies, right?
Absolutely.
Right.
Because the former colonies used to grow a lot of sugarcane, and a lot of the sugarcane or the molasses that was left over after making sugar was used to make rum, and in many places around the globe. My family, my grandfather, my mom's dad, he didn't make rum or wasn't involved, well, other than probably in tasting a lot. But he had this enormous collection of rums from all around the world, with an emphasis on Asia and Indonesia. Okay. And they were all agricultural rums, much like the rum agricoles we know from the French jurisdiction. Jurisdictions around the globe. There are a number of other areas that still produce and have in the past produced rum not from molasses but directly from fresh sugarcane juice. And Grandpa had this huge collection. He lived in an old house in Rotterdam. Tall ceilings and floor-to-ceiling shelves with bottles of rum and books about rum. And all of them were agricultural rums, all made directly from unrefined cane, and none of them from molasses.
Okay.
And that's how it started. Grandpa, even at a tender age, would raise a finger and say, "Rum is distilled waste," referring to molasses rums. and then start to pontificate about agricultural rums and how much better and natural they were, and etc. And as I grew up, gave me an opportunity to understand through tasting and so forth what the differences are.
Right.
And sorry, I'm so long-winded, but
No.
that's how it all started. It left me with an impression, or with the desire to, if it were ever possible, to grow cane and make rum. And so, decades later, I find myself in southern Georgia. No, really, frankly, in Atlanta, and find out, I didn't know it, that southern Georgia used to produce a lot of sugarcane. And
really?
that is where it all of a sudden went,
The light bulb hit.
I got to do this. I got to find some land and see if we can grow some cane and make rum. And that was in the mid-'90s somewhere, and the rest is history.
So at that point, you weren't in the spirits or the distiller business just yet.
No, not at all. Not
Okay.
at all. I had experimented a little bit here and there. For a short period, I have lived in the Middle East, where alcohol was not allowed. And so the only way to get some was by being resourceful and make it yourself. So I bought these huge bags of sugar and used a bathtub at home to ferment sugar and distill it in a small homemade contraption. But and that's probably caused the brain damage that allowed me to go further later on. Yeah.
So, it's usually people that are creative and inventors. There's usually something.
Yeah, something went awry, a short circuit up there.
But you don't have that creative. So that story, that's really fascinating because, that's a journey from where in Indonesia, and I was reading a book with a past guest who was on, Matt Murphy, was an author from Australia. He wrote a book about how rum in Australia, the colonization of how rum was so involved, and he talks about in the intro was how it started here, it traveled and made it through to the Caribbean, and so it's not just as we said, it's all about the Caribbean. It's a lot of people don't realize that it's very global.
Oh,
now, granted, where can you grow the cane versus distilling, and I'm always interested to find out another state somewhere that's making, distilling spirits and distilling rum. But of course, it always got to come back to where is it grown from and so forth.
Yeah. I think the most known varieties are probably cachaça from Brazil and arak from Indonesia. Arak, sometimes you find arak that's pure, has a pure sugarcane juice basis. Sometimes it's fortified by another distillate of something for a small portion. But Indonesian araks have been produced in the past by very large volumes, have been part of the world's currency. A barrel of rum was a denomination of currency, right? In many cases, and a barrel of arak had its own special value. It's very interesting.
Yeah, in that book they talked about how it was such a problem, sending all the criminal colony in Australia and all the rum, and said that the amount of drinking that was involved, that some people would trade their spouses for. More rum. I'm like, I know my wife wouldn't be happy about that. So
that's why we're stacking up more and more barrels
right,
of rum in the barrel house
there you go.
to see if there's currency enough at a certain. Don't tell her.
Yeah. So you've landed in Georgia there, and you learned about that something was going on here in Southwest Georgia, and that kind of sparked the go further. So what then happened next when?
Well, let me first tell you, because it's kind of funny. It all was by accident. I hate to admit this, but we had been living for a couple of years in Atlanta, not knowing that the Georgia climate and topography allowed to grow rum. And it's kind of deceiving because Atlanta is on average, around 1,500 feet above sea level,
Right.
Which I didn't know. But as soon as you start to drive south or east from Atlanta, you start to descend to sea level. And in the short distance, the little over 100 miles from Atlanta to come here, you go down from 1,500 foot to about 200 feet above sea level here. So the climate here is actually different and allows you to grow sugarcane. As soon as you would go maybe 50 miles north, just past Columbus, you're all of a sudden at a topography, an altitude that won't allow you to do it anymore. So and anyway, long story short, one day literally on a rainy Sunday, we were driving in this area in the fall and driving past a little stand along the road. There's a guy who was making and selling sugarcane syrup and drove by and said, "Hey, there's a guy making sugarcane syrup." And it took a little bit
Like,
to
wait a minute.
Sugarcane syrup. So we pulled a Yui and ran back to him and stopped and said, "So you're making sugarcane syrup?" And you could see this guy, his eyes started to roll a little bit. Oh, here's another city dweller, I said, where do you get the sugarcane? And he has this patch of sugarcane right behind him. And so he points behind him and goes, "Duh." Pointing at the sugarcane behind. So, and that was my discovery of the fact that sugarcane does grow here. And then immediately started to talk to people and do some research and found that the area here actually used to produce a lot of sugarcane.
Wow.
By the late 1800s, early 1900s, there were tens of thousands of acres in sugarcane right here.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what happened? Why did it change? Why was there a change? Do you know?
Yes, of course, the climate doesn't, we're not in the tropics.
Mm-hmm.
Sugarcane is a tropical grass.
Right.
Ideally has a growing cycle of about 14 months. At 14 months, sugarcane stalk reaches its ultimate adulthood, has most sugar content and most volume in juice. Here, you cannot grow sugarcane year-round because we have seasons. We have a winter, although it almost never freezes. Sugarcane will die. One night of frost is enough. To make a long story short, we plant sugarcane is planted here in the fall, only to get out of the ground by October, November.
Okay.
And to freeze off often in December, January, but it won't kill it usually, at least not the root system. So come February, March, it will regenerate and grow through November. And then in November you have to hurry and harvest everything as late as possible, usually around Thanksgiving, first week of December kind of time frame, and get everything in before there's any chance of frost. So this is a long story about yields. Yields will here, because of the seasonal growth.
It's a quick turnaround, right? Because you now got to put more back in the ground.
Exactly,
at that same time.
and do it in one time. Whereas in the tropics, you just do it month by month or week by week. You replant, and 14 months later, you can harvest that again.
Right.
So it's all strip grown, usually, and you produce continuously. Here you produce once a year. And of course, the cost associated with that has over time made it impossible to compete with growers in the tropics. That's the story. A little bit south of here, of course, Florida still produces quite a bit of sugarcane. Going west, Alabama, Mississippi is all gone. But Louisiana
Right.
still has quite a bit of cane, but it's struggling.
Yeah.
It's struggling to make sugar. Here in even in Louisiana,
It's not worth it.
no.
Yeah. So it was grown, but never really took off because of the challenges. As you said, it wasn't worth it.
That's
as
right.
opposed to other produce or other things that you can grow. So
Correct.
So yeah, that was I was even surprised traveling again. Florida is definitely could be like, as we joke about, probably different states, or it could be it's a different animal. South Florida, the Central North Florida, to even the Panhandle. And I was surprised that I didn't know, and I didn't grow up and was born in Florida, but that even how there was cotton actually grown in Florida too, and I didn't know that, and it happened to travel through, and said again, there's an assumption again, like cane, right?
Yeah.
It's Georgia, so
Yeah. No. So that is it. Over time, it has become very difficult to compete in world markets, and you see now that the large producers in the world are probably Brazil, India, the Philippines, Indonesia is still very large. And others, but Australia is still a producer.
So now you've met the guy. You've now know that it can be done here.
So yeah, we that's where that inspired a search. At that time, this is in the mid '90s or so, still in printed newspapers. The Atlanta Journal, and we used to use Sunday morning, had to look at the classifieds,
Right.
land for sale in the Atlanta Journal, and found at a certain point a farm called Sugar Hill Farm here in Richland, Georgia, and we said this is an omen.
That's it.
And we ended up buying it. And then, of course, the journey started. Of course, it had to be done at night and weekends and have full-time other work as a hobby, and planted a quarter of an acre and did so with it. And the next year, half an acre, and did a little bit better. And then a year later, a third of an acre, and a frost got it and killed it all, and had to start over. And that is how we learned and got a little bit of a hang of it. And we have a couple of 100 acres now. Yeah.
So is now I know I'm going to go take a trip down to the farm a little bit later, but is this the farthest north sugarcane is grown in the U.S.?
Yeah.
Okay.
Technically not, because if you go east from here up the coast, the Georgia coast, and then into South Carolina, and even into the southern part of North Carolina, immediately along the coast, sugarcane has been grown, and there are still same as here, small patches. Someone who has, an eighth of an acre to make some syrup at the end of the year. But so technically that is a little bit further north than here, a little bit.
Right.
But the answer to your question is yes. This is where it stops.
So now you're producing sugarcane. Now what do we do with it?
Yeah, harvest, needless to say, at the end of the year. Usually, as I mentioned, somewhere between Thanksgiving and the first week, maybe second week of December. Crush immediately from the field, send it into a crusher, and from a crusher into an evaporator. You have to either ferment your juice immediately, as in within hours of crushing it. Otherwise, it will go sour on you. It will self-ferment. A sugarcane stalk, I don't know whether you've seen them up close. You have. But they often have a powdery substance on the outside, white grayish. That's yeast. Those are natural yeasts.
It's already.
And so as soon as you crush them, you mix those in. Those are not the right yeasts to get the kind of fermentation that you want for rum purposes. You get more instead of a good sugarcane wine, you get more like a vinegar. And that's why it says, it's sour. It happens that fermentation process starts immediately. So you either have to introduce the right yeast, or you have to condense it to syrup. Apply heat, let water evaporate, and condense it to syrup. And this is where it gets confusing, because the words syrup and molasses are used interchangeably.
Right.
The difference is very large. Syrup is condensed juice just by applying heat. And molasses is what comes out of the back end of a sugar factory. The molasses is sugarcane syrup, out of which, or in which, many of the natural sugars have been combined to sucrose, the sugar that we buy, and has then been extracted out of the syrup. What's then left over is molasses. It's a byproduct of making sugar.
That's what you said. Your grandfather said, right? The
distilled waste. Yeah. Yeah.
So going through that process, now you've also, so as you said, as a done some of your own at-home distilling.
Yeah.
Right now you have sugarcane, and how do we now transfer into the distilling process?
Yeah. So what we do when we harvest and crush, whatever we can ferment physically possible out of everything. There's about 2,500 gallons of juice that come from an acre. Whatever we have the capacity to physically the capacity to ferment as juice, we do. The rest is condensed to syrup. And the syrup is what allows us to bridge harvest season to harvest season. The syrup is stored. The syrup is in our case, we condense it to about 80 bricks. So it's almost all sugar. There's hardly any water or other medium left.
So it's all solid. Right?
It's very thick and solid, but it's natural. It's unaltered. It hasn't seen anything other than a little bit of heat, and that is what we do during the year: ferment and distill, and then at the end of the year replenish and start over again.
Okay.
So that is what happens. So needless to say that November, December are the busiest months for us. Is then we have to A, harvest, B, crush, C, ferment, and D, make syrup.
So yeah, it's a ongoing cycle.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
It's farming sugarcane in and of itself is like a very demanding enterprise. Distilling rum in and of itself is like a fairly demanding enterprise. Combining the two is like insane. It is. That's why no one is doing it for years and years and years. We have been the only, what is referred to as a single estate producer. Everything from field to glass happens in one place. And there's now a single estate producer since 4 or 5 years or so in Hawaii.
Okay.
So there are the two of us now in the United States of America. But for many years we've just been the only one, and very understandably so. The barrier to entrance is very high, and you're combining two things that you shouldn't combine.
Right, because it's very maybe as you mentioned in the Caribbean, right? There's a lot of those that they have their own farms, they have their own production and everything, but the barrier to entries, for as I've learned over doing this and talking to folks is, and I always just figured everybody who had a rum brand or something in the shelf was everybody had their own distillery or owned their whole thing, until I've learned. And again, I learned so much more talking to my guests and learning, and whereas now there was also contract distilling, because it's a huge barrier to entry to own your own distillery.
Yeah.
And then as you mentioned, then if you own a distillery, then there's a huge barrier to entry is to own land and grow, and there's a whole nother level of it, whereas you can buy. So your sugarcane, is it solely just for yourself, or do you So nobody else.
No.
You sell. Okay.
And it's all used to make our rum.
Okay.
And no other purposes. We sell some of the syrup here, and as almost rum, branded Richland almost rum. But further, no, there are no other purposes. Purely completely dedicated to making rum. And you'll be impressed when you see it.
Yeah. So has there been any interest? Has there been any approach you to try to, or is it just you just make enough sugarcane for what you need, or there's? I mean, ultimately, you're not going to grow sugarcane and have excess without not thinking about it. But I'm just curious because I know there's other people have to source from other locations.
Yeah. So far we have not done that. In the future, we may augment our own single estate rum by a rum still made from syrup. We will not make rum from molasses. And I don't want to put a value judgment on it. There are very good molasses rums, but it's a different product, right? And it's like a red wine and a white wine, or whatever, or a wine and a port, or whatever you want to compare to. But at some point in time, it will make sense for us to continue to have an exclusive single estate set of expressions, and maybe augmented by rum that is made here by the same people, the same way, and so forth, but from syrup, not molasses, from syrup that we buy somewhere else.
Okay.
And there are very high quality syrups available, even nearby in Louisiana. We know a number of producers. We know a number of sugarcane processors who make sugar. And over the years, we've talked to them, have had samples, done tests, and so forth. It's the pure, real deal. And there are a number of small distillers, in particular in Louisiana, who use that. Of course, good quality stuff.
Right. So, this distillation process, you then have everything here. We're here in downtown Richland, and then everything, your barrel houses, and then distillation happens here. So these are some of the products that you have. So you want to talk a little bit about some of the rums here?
Yeah, absolutely. It is. And the beauty is you see 5 bottles here, but it's one rum. We only make one rum. And of course, rum directly from the still is clear. Virgin rum has no color. Whatever color has been imparted on aged rum has been imparted by barrels. It's oak and oak tannins that cause that. So what you see here is one product, but aged in 5 different ways. Not aged, straight from the still, virgin rum. As a matter of fact, as you know, we have a second distillery in Brunswick, Georgia, which is a replica of this distillery, only it's not in the building here, it's down the street in Brunswick, but the farm supplies both. We have the same distilling equipment, use the same recipes, everything is the same. Most of the unaged rum, or what we call virgin rum, is produced by our Brunswick distillery and is labeled virgin coastal rum, as well as the aged version of the same rum is labeled Old Georgia rum. Same thing, but unaged and aged. Now, 4 different ways of aging. The first one, straight up and down. This rum is, 6 to 8 years later, from a barrel is this rum. We offer in most or in all of our expressions the option to buy the rum diluted from still strength to 86 proof or from barrel strength to 86 proof. And what you see here is virgin rum in a blue label. Has been diluted to just using Georgia Aquifer water, diluted to 86 proof. Aged 6 to 8 years, diluted to 86 proof. Aged 6 to 8 years, bottled at cask strength and has, the sequence is, it's the one closest to you with
right here.
The black label is the same as this one,
Okay.
86, and that is foolproof. And
Right.
if you can probably read the little label there, and underneath it, it will say on there what the proof is.
All right. 110.
110. There you go.
Yeah.
So differences in aging, and I will quickly summarize these two. These two have been subject to a barrel exchange. In both cases, we have selected 3-year-old barrels. Rum, virgin rum, has been for 3 years in a barrel. And we pump the rum out of the barrel into a brand new one. And in this case, we give the wet barrel, which has had rum in it for 3 years, to Chateau Elan, north of Atlanta, a wine producer that also produces port wine. And Chateau Elan ages their port wine in our rum barrel for about 18 months. After 18 months, they bottle the rum and give us the barrel back. So now the barrel has had rum in it for 3 years and port wine for a year and a half. And we take match barrel for barrel the rum that was pumped out of it into a new one and pump it back into it.
Oh, the original, the same.
The original.
Oh, okay.
So the original rum has been for 3 years in its own barrel, then for 18 months in a new one, and then it gets reintroduced into its own barrel, which has had port wine in it. How crazy can it get, right? And then we let it rest for another 2 or 3 years, allowing the barrel to exchange aromas between the rum it has had in it in the past, the port that it has had in it, and the rum back in it, giving an aroma profile that's just to die for. It's just fantastic. We do the same thing with a beer brewer.
Okay.
Terrapin Beer Brewing Company in Athens, now owned by Miller. And same thing, 3-year-old barrel. Then they age a milk stout, a heavy, dark beer in there. Same kind of period, 18 months. After 18 months, the milk stout is kegged. We get the barrel back and give it back its own rum. I wish I could say that I was the brilliant inventor of that thought. I am not. That is Spike Bukowski, one of the founders or original founders of Terrapin Beer, who was here one day and said that. Said, you should use a milk stout or an IPA barrel, a heavy. Yeah. And I said, it's too bad.
Yeah.
Spike, that you do not understand rum, because rum and like beer, no. And he kept pushing and explaining, and so one day I thought, okay, let's try one barrel, and if it is not working, we've ruined a barrel, retail value, a lot of dollars.
Right.
So we did, and even after trying and testing and smelling after 3 months, 6 months, we said, "Oh my God!" He was right. It imparts a bready, hoppy, creamy notes to the rum, which are super complementary. And the cask exchanges, the terrapin cask exchanges, are amongst our most popular rums. Yeah,
and it's great that it is, and I'm sure this is done for this reason, is these partnerships with both the wine company, and again, what was the name of the
Chateau Elan.
Okay, Chateau
Elan, yeah.
And then Terrapin, that they're Georgia. You're all a Georgia company,
yes,
right?
Yeah.
No, this is all about Georgia, and the products here, they're all made here, and so forth, right?
It is, and it's been very gratifying. There is at Chateau Elan a top-notch, world-quality winemaker, a fellow by the name of Simone Berghesi. He's from Italy, and Chateau Elan have, after years and years and years, been able to recruit him, and he's the one who helps us with the barrel exchange there, and gives us the privilege of having access to his knowledge and his guidance as a leading winemaker in the world. Yeah,
yeah. There's a lot that, and I had on recently a guest who involved with, and I know I've had some folks that, and I'm trying to stay positive here, is kind of what we're all keen about, but what I'm getting to is, there's sommeliers, right? And then there's been a form of rum liaise, right? And I've talked to a lot of guests that I've had on that are some sommeliers, or they have a wine background and so forth. And that tasting aspect is really important.
It is.
Yeah. To understand some of those different things about what makes it and what may go together, right?
Yeah.
Because, like you said, may not have initially thought of it, but Spike kind of had an understanding of what it could be.
Yep. Yeah. In that case, as a beer maker, but your observations about sommeliers is a very good one, because in contrast to starch-based products like whiskeys and vodkas, of course, this is a natural sugar-based product, and is really a cognac or a brandy. Right? When you distill wine made from grapes, you get brandy. If you happen to do it in the Bordeaux region, it's called cognac, right? But brandies, although there are fruit brandies and so forth, but a pure brandy, is a distilled wine made from grapes. This is a distilled wine made from sugarcane juice. Mm-hmm. So the connection between rum and brandy is very close as distilled wines. And then on the other side, you have all the distilled starches, like whiskeys and tequilas and vodkas, right, and etc. And where, of course, you start with a starch, then convert the starch into sugar, and then ferment the sugar into alcohol. We, brandy and rum makers, start with sugar and ferment it and distill it. Mm-hmm. And that's why this is a more direct and more natural product. Many of our big fans are cognac and high-end brandy drinkers.
Okay.
Who enjoy this as in a similar fashion, out of a snifter and as a cordial after dinner.
So do you have a lot of folks that either have come through here, stop in, or maybe at events you might be at where they don't know who you are, and it's very similar to, like, the bourbon drinkers and the whiskey drinkers who have a certain level, and they find out that, and there was a story about another company had done some blind tastings with bourbon drinkers, and they couldn't believe they were drinking rum.
Yeah.
Right. So very probably similar with with the brandy drinkers, right?
Very similar. We have done that often and continue to do that here often. Having tastings and have 5 tasting glasses, and one of them is a bourbon or one of them is a brandy, and we ask the experts to pick them. In many cases, they don't. They don't. They pick a rum, and it is even the other way around. We've been naughty and have had bourbons, and at least that's what the drinker thought. And we asked them to pick their favorite, and in many cases it's the rum. So it. By the way, people come here and to Brunswick, to the distilleries, because of you and people like you who make the effort to allow people to learn about the spirit and give it context and color. And with that, that is often an impetus to say, oh, now I want to see and experience the real thing.
Right.
Yeah. So thank you. Absolutely.
Yeah, and like I said, I've been dying to come up here for the longest time to do this, and been trying to figure out how do I do a swing through up from Florida and a couple other stops along the way, and I got some other guests that I'm trying to figure out up in North Carolina area, right? And it's like, how do I make this road trip? And again, like I said, if Discovery Channel or Food Network wants to, put a show on, I'm all for that. So I can road trip, and again, I do have a day job and mortgage and all those other things and family and But yeah, no, I totally I enjoy having folks, owners, brand to come in and tell that story, and again, like I said, get it out there. So definitely, thank you. So yeah, it's getting the word out, right? Because it's. As we were just talking with our guest yesterday, who we just taped an episode with, an independent drum maker. And how does he get out there in front of all the other big names, the mass marketing, and to kind of get out there to let people know, hey, there's some good quality stuff. Yeah. He's a little guy, but how does he crack into that? And very similar too, right? It's some of the...
And it in our experience, it reinforces each other. Right. If we continue to send people to your links and your podcasts, that sort of reverberates around, and it really works, and it brings people here.
Yeah. So you mentioned Brunswick, right? And so at some point, I know that's a couple things that you offer with Richland, whether it's here in Richland or in Brunswick. So what are some of the things that folks can, that are maybe passing through here in this side of Georgia, or also passing through, hey, they're on the way up I-95, and instead of stopping off at south of the border, which really isn't really, I know when I was a kid driving up and down I-95, south of the border was always, the signs. I think there's always the signs that made it more, and then you got there like, oh, this is it. No offense. There goes that sponsorship. But similarly, like with Brunswick, right? Because that's fairly. I mean, how far off in 95? It's not too far.
No, it's almost immediate on 95.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, it's one of the points where I-95 comes closest to the coast.
Right.
And there's a number of exits that take you immediately to downtown Brunswick, and we are right in old downtown Brunswick on Newcastle Street. And there's a complete distillery there, like we have here. There's a tasting room. There's a retail store. It's open for tours, like we are here. Monday through Saturday from 10 till 6. Both places are open. Both places produce. People will always be able to see production going on, taste some rum dripping out of the still, virgin rum, and people are usually very amazed about the sweet, flowery, caney, grassy notes that are there, and even at full proof. And knowledgeable people who always take the time to explain what we do and why it is different. And of course, a full opportunity to to buy rum other than tasting it. That's in both cases. Only here is where we age. Whatever we produce in Brunswick is either bottled as unaged rum and or sent here to be barreled and aged. And so this place is a little different because we have our barrel houses here. And of course, this is where the farm is.
Right. Okay. So everything is the virgin rums distilled in Brunswick.
Yes.
Then brought back or bottled there.
Yes.
Right.
Bottled
and then,
there and brought back
right,
here. This has been brought here and bottled.
Okay.
Yeah.
So no offense, it's not that I didn't want to go to Brunswick. I wanted to come I wanted to come to Richland. So no offense to everybody, your Brunswick location. I said I will get there at some point, but I said I want to go where it's all, obviously the whole farm, the whole experience, right?
Our folks, the big objective that we have with our team in Brunswick is to have the name of the city turned into Brunswick with an M, and we're on our way to get there.
So also here as part of the farm is a little bit down the road. And throughout I think it's mostly in the fall, right? You have some other events there, tours of the farm, and there's a couple different. You can talk a little bit about some of so if somebody wanted to come out to the farm and experience a little bit more longer tour, some of those things.
We first and foremost, it is advertised on our website, richlandrum.com, where we in the fall. Have no fixed programs, but have programs where it is possible for people to come and visit the farm, tour it. We most of it do it by ourselves. In some cases, we do it with other Georgia partners, like White Oak Pastures, a producer of meats, but in a unique, all natural, free roam environment. They are very high on education and sharing of knowledge and arrange tours. We do that here, and sometimes we collaborate with producers like that, give people an opportunity to visit both places. Unique, local, pure agricultural, sustainable, high-end stewardship places. The farm is definitely an example of that. White Oak Pastures is another good example. But so yes, in the fall, primarily we have events. They are on the website.
Okay.
For anybody interested in experiencing the unique way in which this product is not produced but crafted, I should say. Is always welcome. Yeah.
Okay. Now there too on the farm. This is something my wife was when I told her was that you have a sanctuary too.
Yes, we do, which makes it extra special. An important portion of the farm serves as a sanctuary for wild mustangs. The wild mustang, which is there's no more important icon for freedom in America than the wild mustang, which roams free primarily in the western states, is a little bit of a victim of overpopulation, as we all encroach more and more on wild lands. Mustangs are increasingly being displaced and are captured by the government, by the BLM, the Bureau of Land Management, and are very inhumanely kept in holding pens where there are tens of thousands of mustangs. And there are a number of brave people like my wife, Karen, who have taken it upon themselves to take on a few of them, and we have 22 who roam free which out of the tens of thousands hardly is a drip in the bucket, but it draws a lot of attention for the issue that is there. And so, that is another very unique feature of the farm, where there's sugarcane on one side and wild mustangs roaming around on the other. It's amazing. Yeah,
that's right. And that's great, because to take up a cause like that is, there's so much that as the country grows, and right, a lot of land is lost for natural things that existed, and so hats off to Karen.
It is a very good cause, and it is, over the years, I have to say, the direct contact with the wild horses has changed my view on wild animals, on wild horses in particular, but on wild animals and almost life in general. It's amazing the interaction that can be there.
Yeah, and I just heard the other day that Ringling Brothers, the circus, is starting back up, but without animals.
Yeah.
And so I'm sure a lot of folks that grew up remember those things, but at the same time, it's like, just because we used to do it doesn't mean we still do it.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
So, you can go to a zoo and other places to,
Yeah.
The circus may not be the same luster, but then again, we have the internet now and all these other things that you didn't have when we were younger and so forth. And of course, people didn't know any better. But
This anyone interested in it should listen to Elton John's song "Live Like Horses." It represents both in copy as well as in emotion everything that freedom stands for. And when I see our own wild horses, that's
it's a little bit like you, right?
There's a wild horse right here. Yeah, only it drinks rum.
There you go. So the now I know you just recently, and I know it may have been a couple of years ago, but I just saw the recent post, and I know it wasn't so recent, but you had received an award from the Georgia Congress or the state.
Yeah, we've been blessed and fortunate to be recognized. We've been recognized in many ways, and fortunately, definitely by the state of Georgia, who have a number of consecutive years recognized us as one of Georgia's fastest growing exporters. A significant percentage of our product is exported. And that has been recognized by the state of Georgia. Also, the help toward, or the inspiration toward, legislative changes. It isn't that long ago that you could produce spirits here in Georgia, but you could not allow anyone to taste them or to buy them. And we've had when I started as the first one technically since Prohibition there has been one distillery near Albany called Phoenix in the 1980s, and it produced whiskey, vodka, and everything. Yeah. Lived for 5 years or so and disappeared, went bankrupt. And then in 1999 we started, and there was no one else.
Right.
And also the Georgia Department of Revenue did not know how to handle this. Since then, the relationship with them has been very close, and as we started to grow, we've asked a lot of attention for the fact that here we are in the United States of America, land of the free, where an entrepreneur in alcohol is not that free. And the Georgia legislature has picked up on that in a major way. As a matter of fact, you can see here an article. Karen, from when dates this? 2020, where we are recognized as an economic development, exports, job creation, international awards, etc. As a further now initiative by the Georgia House of Representatives to take also spirits production to the 21st century.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
You know, and so we're very proud of that interaction that has led to very tangible results. There are now, I think, 25 or 30 distilleries here in Georgia, and not very long ago that would not have been possible.
Right, and that's it's crazy, right? Is prohibition was so long ago, and then when you started the company, 2011 or a little sooner.
Really in 1999.
Okay,
but around 2010, we have started to sell aged product. Yeah.
And how the rules and it's very common. It's talking to other folks, and you probably know this, especially when I talk to the folks, distillers in Florida, that a lot of the towns, or the cities, or the counties, or the local governments just didn't know how to deal with it. But some of that craft brewing had, was a big thing in the early 2000s, and it kind of helped pave the way for some of it. But then still, spirits is a little bit treated a little differently, right? Than beer, right? For obvious reasons. That's great. And again, to your point, it's the land of the opportunities and so forth. And here you're a legal business and so forth, but how to make it easier for businesses to pursue, and especially small business, right?
It is it is really a tragedy to see that a system that has been designed in the 1930s, the three-tier system, the infamous three-tier system,
right,
still exists.
Yeah.
Wake up, country. We're in 2022, and as a producer, not to be able to sell directly to a retailer, which still is not possible. You can sell a little bit now directly to consumers. Anyone who comes into the store can buy something. Right. We cannot send anything to anybody.
Right.
We cannot sell to retailers, either bars, restaurants, or wine and liquor stores directly. You have to go through a distributor by law.
Do you have it set up on the website through, I know there's a couple in Florida that have ability to go through another company?
Yes.
Okay. So
we have an online store where you can order directly.
Okay.
If you live in certain states.
Oh, okay.
It's not in all states, but it's in 30 states or so. We can ship.
Okay.
Through a very complicated mechanism, but had to do it legally.
Right.
But yeah, if you go to richlandrum.com, there's an online tab, and you can order rum there. Yeah.
My 3 barrels that I have been all bought here.
Fantastic.
So I have not bought online, but those definitely, it's a great way to segue into checking out the website too, so forth. And you're right, it's so difficult because to buy the spirits, especially that are the distribution is a huge thing. And I know that was something recently they passed in Florida too, very similar. Last year, the governor signed it that allowed on-premise distilleries to be able to sell their own products and then be able to sell drinks on their premises. So a lot of distillers now are opening up a little bit more, expanding their business to try to keep people in there too. So
yeah. It is what a novel thought that a producer can actually sell its product.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I make it, but I can't sell it to you. Right. That's.
It was Paul. It was very interesting in the early years. The Speaker of the House, David Ralston, visited us, and in a very positive spirit, learning about it, and said, "Wow, not in Georgia. How can we change this?
Yeah.
How can we open this up?" And he visited us, and at that point, right across from the Barrel House on the other side of the street, there was a little store called the Rum Store, or the Distillery Store. And the Distillery Store was owned by someone from Atlanta, and had a license and sold only rum from it was independent store. We can't own a store, as you know. And so David stands in the door opening of the barrel house and looks across the street, and he says, "Oh, you all have a store there?" And we had to say, "Well, Mr. Chief Legislator, that is not allowed, as you know." And so there was an opportunity to go on, and he has this entourage and press and so forth, to say, "Look, the rum, Richland rum, sold in that store is the rum with the highest carbon footprint in the world. Because if that guy orders his 6 cases or 10 cases from our distributor in Atlanta, the distributor in Atlanta sends a little van to here, pick up the 6 cases, then drives back to Atlanta to check it into a bonded warehouse, then turns around and delivers it across the street. Can we make sense out of that?" And he said, "Not on my watch." And so, it's been the house in particular, David and the local representatives and so forth, and the whole body there those are Georgians. Those are business forward thinking people, who have made an enormous difference and have made it possible for us to create jobs, to create exports, to renovate buildings in Richland and in downtown Brunswick that otherwise would have been falling to pieces, and that's thanks to them.
Yeah, and again, it goes to the business, right? Businesses creates jobs and creates part of the economy and everything. So
it pays taxes and
there's an equal balance between government has to help, as they help individual citizens, but yet then there's the fair share. So
these guys have been facilitators, and that's the form of government that is attractive to an entrepreneur.
Right. Yeah. All right, so as we're getting ready to land this, I know you've got something coming up here, so I'm going to try to make this quick. So I know you listen to the podcast, so you know what's coming up here next is the rapid fire segment. So are you ready for the rapid fire segment?
Yes, sir. Yes.
In 4 sips or less.
So in 4 beats or less, neat or on ice?
Neat.
Okay. All right. So I know you are a little bit of a musician as well. You do play the piano. And, and piano is a percussion instrument, as you know, right? And harpsichord too, right?
Yes, I do.
Well, we may have to save that for another segment here, so we're going to learn about that. And you do music real quick. Segue is you do have some live music at the Brunswick location too, right? Typically. Used to more, but very light, more in the jazz direction. Yeah. Okay. So all my jazz listeners and guests who have come on, so definitely stop on through 95. So, so in 4 beats or less, so music related, what's the best concert that you've been to?
I would have to hesitate between Elton John and the Rolling Stones.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, that's some top-notch stuff there. So So all right. So in 4 beats or less. So where's your ideal vacation spot? Since you've traveled a lot around the world, where's your go-to?
Right here, Georgia. Immediately. Enjoy traveling around the world and seeing things, and always further and further confirming how unique this state is. It's in all its aspects, in its topography, in its climates, in its vegetation, its proximity to water, the amount of inland water that is there, the aquifer system, the river system that it has. It's fantastic. It's vacation land.
It's Georgia is very very varied, as you mentioned. You were talking about the elevation earlier. The topography is part of the foothills of part of the Appalachian, right? and then you go to the coast, and then so it's a great there's a lot of great places here. So visit Georgia, right? So
visit Georgia. That is absolutely, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart.
Yeah,
that variety between the coastal or the mountains area and the Piedmont and the coastal plains. There's such a variety. It's beautiful.
All right, so last one here. So in 4 beats or less, knowing what you know now, what would you do different?
Nothing. No, absolutely not. Have enjoyed this and enjoying this tremendously. I'm itching to continue to improve the product. Constantly have new ideas. Don't want to change anything in terms of adding other spirits or other varieties, but just improving on what we have. An all natural rum made directly from unrefined cane with 0 additives. The only thing that you will find in this bottle is sugarcane juice and water. There's nothing has else been added. So the answer to your question is not much.
Okay. All right. Well, fair enough. So now that you've made it through the podcast here and are part of our ceremoniously here is you've now been part of the Drums and Rums alum there. So there you go.
Fantastic.
So now, as I call it, right, everyone's part of the Drums and Rums alum. So again, you've joined the illustrious of many musicians and other folks in the rum industry as well too. So thank you for so forth. So as you mentioned, Erik, is what do you want folks here? Here's the shameless plug part. Here's the promotion part. Is tell the camera there. It says, what do you want folks to check out?
Please, first and foremost, check out the website richlandrum.com, and or if at all possible, guided by the website, visit either the distillery here in Richland and or the farm, or come and see us in Brunswick. Do it. Whenever there's a chance, you will learn a lot about what we have been discussing, and you will find very knowledgeable, very friendly, and very knowledgeable people to take you on a journey there.
Right. All right. Well, very good. So, like I said, I know you've got some stuff to do, and I appreciate taking the time this morning. Let me come by, and thank you for hosting us here.
I will wear this with pride.
Thank
you so much.
You got it, Erik. Thanks.
All
right, all. Thank you all. This is, like I said, you're going to have to watch more of the content, though, because I'm going to go see some more cool stuff. So follow the other content we've got there.
Thank you, sir.
You got it. Thanks, Erik.
If you like what we're doing here at Drums and Rums, we have a Patreon link to help with setting up interviews and creating content that you find entertaining and interesting. Also, if you'd like to sponsor, advertise on the podcast, or if you want to come on as a guest to promote something related to the show, email me at info@drumsandrums.com. Lastly, I want to thank Brad's rock tune titled Once Upon a Bottle of Rum, and check out his podcast, Jams and Cocktails. Thanks again for listening, where the backbeats meet the spirits.